any representations on recent changes to visa arrangements
When you say representations...
from universities or from researchers?
Yes.
And what is the nature of those changes?
So I think it's about working through the implementation of those recently announced changes and understanding what that means.
You have a whole series of programs that are actually aimed at attracting international scholars, don't you?
Yes, as in particular the Future Fellows scheme you're referring to.
Were you consulted about the changes to the visa programs, the 457 arrangements?
Not prior to the announcement.
How many, do you have any information on the number of scholars that actually were on 457 visas?
No, we don't collect that information. That's an employment question for universities.
Have you any, what's the nature of the representations that you've had in regard to those visa changes?
So I think with regards to understanding about what does that mean for people who are on the different lists and what does that mean for going forward? That's basically the thrust of what the representations have been, just in trying to understand how this will be implemented going forward, and we're working with a whole range of different stakeholders on that.
Will you have any input into the process from this point on?
We've been involved since it was announced with regards to working with the various players with regards to what does that mean and how that can be looked at going forward. So Department of Border Protection.
The Education Department's
yes.
been directly, surely, consulted on this. Is that the case, Madam Secretary?
Excuse me. David Leamoth, Deputy Secretary, Department of Education and Training. We were consulted as part of the usual government decision-making, Senator.
Yes. There is actually a representative group, a consultative group. Are you on that group?
Which one do you mean?
The Department of Immigration has a consultative group. Are you on that group?
I'm not quite sure which one you mean. They've got a few.
I thought it was called a consultative group.
Oh, there's a ministerial advisory. There's a ministerial advisory council.
Yes,
we're not on that. No.
You're not.
No.
See, because we couldn't find that the universities were on it either. I'm just wondering who the immigration actually talked to before they made these changes.
Well, as I say, there was the usual consultation as part of government decision making.
Cabinet decision making. So I see. So just part of the co-op comments were.
There was engagement as part of the decision-making.
So was the ARC asked about it as part of the co-ord comments?
No, that would have been the department, Senator.
So you don't ask the agencies anymore?
It would have been the department, Senator.
There was a practice to actually ask agencies for their views on matters like this. Doesn't happen anymore?
I couldn't comment on what.
Minister, do you normally ask your agencies and part of your co-ord comments?
Well, Senator, co-ord comments are by their nature coordinated by the department in terms of the provision into the cabinet process. They're comments of the departments, not of the ministers themselves, as you would appreciate.
I do appreciate that.
And I imagine that the department would consider, on a case-by-case basis, if there was a need to seek opinion further in relation to any particular proposal.
But I would have thought something like this, taking life sciences, for instance, off the list for 457 visas, you would consult the agencies in the Education Department as to what impact it would have. Wouldn't it have been an unreasonable question, Madam Secretary, to ask your agencies what impact it would have?
Michelle Brunage, Secretary of the Department of Education and Training. Look, it's a case-by-case basis, Senator, so we would have provided
Let's
advice.
talk about this particular case.
Okay. We would have provided advice to government on the best of our knowledge. We would have made a decision whether or not it was appropriate or not to go out to other agencies. In this case, we didn't, and we provided advice as a department.
I see. So you're aware of the implications it has for universities, for researchers, of taking those particular categories of life scientists and other scientists off the list for 457 visas?
As I said, Senator, we would have provided advice in the normal process of advice to government for those decisions.
Yes, I know, and you can't tell me what the advice was. I'm not going to ask you what your advice was, But I take it you were aware of the consequences.
We're aware of the reforms being proposed to government, Senator.
And you're surprised by the response within the universities, the research community?
I think, as has been commented, we have been talking to the sector, and we have been engaged with the Department of Immigration and Border Protection, whose process this is, to ensure that the concerns of the sector are represented and understood. I think you'd probably be aware, Senator, of Minister Dutton's letter to the Group of Eight and to Universities Australia,
I am aware
which
of it.
deals with the process and his intentions.
I'm told there's supposed to be a review underway. I'm also told that there'll be some discussions been held where they're less than satisfactory in terms of the participants in those about the nature of that review. But that's not really what I'm going to. I can't quite follow why it is that we could get ourselves into this situation where so many people are making their views known about something I would have thought should have been widely known in terms of the implications for universities and the research community about what is essentially an international component. This is not burger flippers and people being ripped off in meatworks. These are actually people in, like the Vice-Chancellors, a couple of Vice-Chancellors were affected by this. We've got people leading research teams. We've got people in major companies directly affected by this decision. I'm surprised that people wouldn't have known that. I'm sure the research agency, like the Australian Research Council, would have known it. Why they weren't asked?
Well, Senator Carr, I'm not sure. Firstly, you should say you're sure the ARC would have known the visa implications or otherwise of different individuals in different positions across the university and research sector. In the end, immigration has been working closely with the department and with universities to resolve any areas of uncertainty that that have been created out of the announcement, and I'm grateful for the fact that the university sector has been very engaging and constructive in their work with immigration to try to make sure that all of those different factors are well understood.
Problem is,
Senator Carr, we seem to have some media in the room. Is everybody happy for media to be in the room? Thank you.
we're right to go? It's just that I went to the Immigration Department, as you'd expect I would, and they told me to come here about this matter. They said they consulted with you and that you were the source of advice on these matters. Talking, Madam Secretary of the Department of Education.
Well, I think I assume you're paraphrasing there, Senator Carr, and I'm interested as to
I
precisely...
can get the Hansard if I've misquoted
and I'm interested as to precisely what you might be suggesting there. I mean, obviously, in the end, immigration are the lead agency when it comes to policy decisions taken by government about visa arrangements.
That's why I'm surprised then that the ARC weren't asked directly.
Senator, I can assure you that we provided the best advice to all of our knowledge with, in terms of that process of advice to government, and that included our higher ed, education and research team. We would have provided, as I said, in the context of that, to a cabinet process, the best possible advice we could as a department.
Mm-hmm. So the laureates fellowships, Ms Harvey, I mean, do you know how many international scholars you have on laureates here?
Yes. So we have. So when we talk about them, we categorise as what we call foreign nationals, so
yes,
people
yes.
who don't have Australian citizenship.
Yes.
So since 2010, we have 10.
10. And
out of a total of 113.
Sure, but you've got 10. Now, what sort of people are these 10?
Well, a laureate scheme is our, what we call our top of
They're
career,
premium scholars, aren't they?
prestigious
Yeah? International
laureates.
scholars,
Yes.
well, you know, they're
Yep.
world-renowned, are they not?
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a reasonable expectation that just about all of those would be on some form of short-term visa.
I can't comment on their visa arrangements, Senator.
And they're people that are research leaders in key positions?
Yes, by definition of
By
winning a laureate.
definition.
Absolutely.
By definition.
Yes.
What other programs do you have that attract international scholars?
Our Future Fellowship Scheme that I mentioned earlier, and also our Discovery Early Career Researchers as well.
So how many on both of those?
So for our Discovery Early Career Researchers, which commenced 2012 as a very particular program, we have 426 funded foreign nationals out of 1,277. And for our Future Fellowship Schemes from 2010, we have 133 out of 1,111, no, 1,113. Too many threes in there for me, sorry.
Thank you. And Madam Secretary, how many vice chancellors do you think are here on 457 visas?
No,
We'd
I'd
have no
to
information
take
on that,
notice.
Senator.
Does it surprise you that we have any?
We'd have no information, Senator. It would be a matter for immigration, and there might be some challenge with the way the data is held in terms of employment classifications to identify those people.
But it didn't occur to you that there'd be any at all?
Senator, you know, it wouldn't have precluded that there could well be.
Well, I assure you there are. And how many foreign nationals do you think we have as vice chancellors?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator.
How many Nobel Prize winners here? Foreign nationals.
Again, I'd have to take that on
How
notice,
many
Senator.
people have done the whammy of having a Nobel Prize and being a Vice-Chancellor?
Well, you know,
And being
it doesn't take long to work that one out. But I'm just saying to you, this is the nature of, I would have thought, information the department with the expertise that I would expect the Education Department have would have been able to communicate to government. And if it didn't, the ARC surely would be able to help you out with the detailed knowledge of the university system that is available to you.
Senator, again, we were consulted, and as I'm sure you know, Minister Dutton has written to the sector. There's a process in train. Minister Dutton says in his letter that he shares the sector's concern that the changes should not have unintended consequences for the sector, that the changes are not intended to be a barrier to the entry of highly skilled academics and researchers, and he has asked his department, to develop options to ensure that the visa program continues to facilitate the entry of these specialists. There's a process underway in consultation
Well,
with
it'll be
the
easily
sector.
fixed.
The Immigration Department understands each of the concerns the sector has raised. The Minister for Immigration has made his intentions clear in that letter. I think we should await and see what comes out of the process.
Thank you. Can I ask then, in terms of the research